Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's workshop, part of Internship Training Week brought to you by Communiqué, IIT Kharagpur. I'm Anusha Baheti, and alongside me is Himani Shah. We'll be your host for this session, which will focus on one of the most important aspects of your internship journey, building a strong and impactful CV.
Today, to help us navigate this, we are joined by two outstanding individuals, Anshul Trehan and Shubhranil Mitra, who have secured internships at some of the most reputed companies around the globe. Let's begin by having each of them briefly introduce themselves and tell us where they're currently interning. Anshul, would you like to start?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Anshul Trehan. I am pursuing mathematics and computing. I'll be like my final year will be next year, and I'm interning in Goldman Sachs, as you can see on the slide. And so far, I think 5 weeks of my internship has finished. 5 weeks are left. So yeah.
Thank you, Anshul. Shubhranil, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Shubhranil Mitra. I'm currently pursuing a BTech in Electronics and Electrical Communication Engineering and will enter into my fourth year. I'm currently interning in American Express and working on some past customer segmentation. So, and my 4 weeks of internships have passed by pretty quickly. So that's
Thank you, Shubhranil. Now that we have known our amazing panelists, let's get started. And yes, we will be taking your questions towards the end, so feel free to drop them in the chat anytime.
So let's begin with the most crucial question. How can students work on building a well-balanced CV? Like, what are recruiters typically looking for in terms of academic performance, technical skills, projects, and extracurriculars? Anshul, would you like to start with this?
Yeah. So from a tech perspective, right? Like all of the answers will be focusing uh, the tech field. Essentially, recruiters look for two or three sort of things. One is like your CG, like your CGPA should be above a threshold. So, like obviously, as like how much higher CGPA is, that helps. But to be honest, at max, if it's above a threshold, 8 or 8.5, and you actually have a skill set that caters to what company you are targeting to, that is what the recruiter is looking for. So if I delve down, if you are targeting say a quant and a IB quant company, they will be actually looking for skills in probability, PNS, and your questions, like even when you are making your CV, you need to ensure that you are putting some lines regarding justifying those skills. Similarly, like if you are actually aiming towards something like a software field, you need to put projects, skill set, showing your experience in web dev. So, like, what you need to keep in mind is when whatever company you're targeting, you need to make sure that you have the required skill set or project according to that field, and you have a CGPA above a threshold. So obviously, like you can't bypass any of that. Like if you even if you have one or you don't have the other, you are at a, let's say, a step behind to someone else. So you need to keep, like you need to cover both in mind. So as I think at this point, since only a month or so is left, you would have some target companies in mind, right? So do not expect to be actually approached, get a shortlist from a company if you don't have anything mentioning what that company is looking for. So yeah, that is one thing you need to keep in mind.
That's a good perspective. Shivani, would you like to add on?
sure. So what I would say is that while past internships do lend some additional credibility to your CV, but they are not mandatory to have. It's good if you have it, lends a little bit more solidity, and especially if it's in a field that is very aligned with what the company does. And also for projects and competitions, you need to have something that is aligned with the company you are looking at, just like Anshul said, right? So if you're targeting the data field, so a few hackathon wins or a few competition wins in the data field will always, boost your CV in the eyes of recruiters. That's it.
You mentioned projects were like, does personal projects play a big role or team-based projects?
So team-based projects usually end up either being uh, coursework projects or competition projects. But if you're building uh, self projects with a team, then what I would say is you need to be very, very clear in what your role was and how it fits into the overall project. And not only that, you also need to have a whole, you need to have a full perspective as to what the project does, right? So it's not just you did your work and you do not need to know anything about it. So you can't do that, right? So self projects are important, especially if you're doing it yourself, because it shows the recruiter that you are interested and you have the necessary knowledge to build those kind of projects on your own, right? Without any external help, you have the full stack of skills in yourself. That's what it is.
Thank you, Shubhanil. That's great to hear. Moving on to the next question. Many students face issues with the ERP system, whether it's updating resumes, filling out internship forms, or generating official documents. Can you walk us through the entire process and highlight any common mistakes to avoid? And also, if mistakes do arises, how do students tackle them smartly and efficiently? Anshul, would you like to take this?
Yeah. So first part would be like the entire process of ERP system. One thing is, I think when the CDC actually portal opens up on your ERP, the you would have to do two things. One is your CV making. So like you have to make your CV on their platform on ERP only. And it is, I think last year also like we had given review to platforms. So it is a bit difficult to make your CV on that platform. So at present, like what I would recommend everyone is to be prepared with your CVs on doc at least on a doc so that when the portal actually opens, you get uh, 5 days to actually make your CV to build it on their platform. And if you're at that point building from scratch, then it gets a bit tough. Also, sometimes like the bugs that happen is that you have saved, but it doesn't save, or there's an alignment issue, or you can't change the font as such. So the entire point is if you are prepared with a CV beforehand, you don't have to focus on the content. All you need to focus is just making it look appealing, making sure there are no white spaces on the CV, and that is very important. When you are making your CV, right, be thorough that you are not leaving white spaces and you are actually putting emphasis on what work you've done. I think we can get back to that part later. Second important part will be like you have to apply for companies like you actually see on the portal which companies are coming. So for that you need to actually apply for what companies you are targeting. The best approach would be to just apply for all companies you're eligible for. But if you have a particular preference and you actually know this, like you're a fit for this company and you're targeting this company, apply that. And after that, you get an opportunity to sit for OAs and like the next process. So you need to check that portal again and again. Technically, there are WhatsApp groups. So you will be part of WhatsApp groups made by platforms that, okay, this company has came, this company has came. But like the best advice still would be keep checking that portal regularly.
Great
Um,
insights. Thank you. Shubhrani, would you like to add something to it?
Sure. So what I would say is that first of all, just like Anshul said, have an image of what you want your CV to look like in your mind. A good idea would be to approach a senior that you know, maybe from your hall or from your society. and ask them for their CDC CVs. So you know how the structure of a CDC CV looks like, right? And also, a few things to keep in mind are number one is font size. Uh, when you highlight important parts of your CV in bold, right? So one of the things that happens in the ERP portal is that the size of the text becomes larger. Suppose you're writing your CV in font size 10 and you make a selection bold. So that part increases its size to 11. So you have to manually shift it down to 9. So when you bold it, it becomes 10. And also you have the opportunity to make 3 CVs and apply to each company with a CV which is more aligned with that company, right? So these are some things to keep in mind when you are making your CV through the portal. Again, the portal isn't the easiest to use, but if you have a vision of what you want your CV to look like, it will be much easier.
Thank you. Uh, Now, moving on to the next question. As Anshul already mentioned, CGPA actually plays a very important role. But what, like for students who have comparatively lower CG, what are some strategic ways to boost their profile and still stay competitive? Shubhrani, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. So a few companies do have CGPA cutoffs, and if you aren't above that threshold, you won't be eligible to sit for the OA. But let us suppose you are eligible to sit for the assessment, but you are on the lower side of the space. So what you have to do is, if your CGPA is on the lower side, you have to be good at something else. Say you have to be very good at competitive programming, or you have to perform very, very well in the assignments that are given to you. Say there's a company called TechSquant which gives out a challenge, a machine learning data science challenge to solve just before the interview. So you have to perform very well on that. So, or you have to have very good projects that stand out among other resumes, right? So it's just a game of balance among your CGPA projects and skills. So if one component is a little bit lower, you have to make sure that the rest of the components are much higher than the average person, right?
Wow, that was really insightful, Shubhanil. Anshul, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I think Shivani covered most of the aspect really nice. Just would like to emphasize on the point that if you have a slightly lower CG, but like there are some companies who have their OAs offline. So like one advantage that you can have is if you have a particularly good CP, you can differentiate yourself on for that particular companies because they are only looking for that specific skill set. So if you perform well in their OA, like you solve all five of the questions or something like that, you have a very good chance of cracking good companies. So or something like TechSmart that Shivani mentioned. So I think he pretty much answered everything related to that. You need to differentiate yourself in something else if CGPA is slightly on the lower side.
And let's say someone has a high CG. Is your CG enough to get noticed, or do you still have to do extra projects or DSA to stand out?
So high CG technically helps, but it's like it's not a guarantee, right? Even if you have high CG, and let's say you have the pointers in your CV, so like you get an interview shortlist, CG won't help you convert that interview. You need to have the skill set or what they are specifically asking. So as long as you have that, and so DSA, I think you mentioned DSA. I don't think if you don't know DSA and you are aiming for a lot of companies, you won't be making it through because the interview rounds are purely like most, especially for SD or some like HFT companies, uh, they do ask a lot of significant amount of DSA, so their CGPA doesn't help. But what it helps is it helps differentiate two people with same or an almost same skill set. So if you have a comparable skill set and you have like a bit higher CGPA, it does help. So it's like a additional factor, but it's not a guarantee. So you need to do other skill set.
Oh, wow, that's totally fair. Moving on to the next question, let's talk about self-initiated projects. How valuable are they on a CV, and what kind of projects typically stand out most to the recruiters? Shubhanil, would you like to take this one?
Sure. So, as Anshul already mentioned, that self-initiated projects are pretty important when it comes to showcasing your CV to the recruiters, especially as uh, you don't have any particular experience as such, being still in college. So, when you are making your project, keep in mind that you have the option to make three CVs, and so you can make your projects which are tailored to a particular domain as such. Doesn't have to cover all domains. Say, if you are making an SDE project, you can focus on the backend databases, the APIs, and the front end. And when you're making a data project, you can focus on the models, the performance, the ablation studies. So that's what I think, that self projects definitely give a boost to your CV, but they should be aligned with the domain you are targeting.
Wow, that's insightful. Anshul, would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, two things. One is like, suppose you haven't had, like Shubhranil said, you haven't had any research intern or a competition that targets a particular domain. So I think self projects actually come in that field. Suppose you have a month and you're targeting, let's say, an IB call. It is exceptionally, like, it is very important that you actually mention some quant related project. It could be time series, could be Monte Carlo simulation, etc., because that would differentiate your profile and makes your profile a lot more lucrative compared to some other profile that has nothing related to quant, right? So self-protect is an excellent way to just mention something ki, okay, I have an inclination towards your field and maybe I'm a good fit. But at the same time, like, there's a disclaimer that I'm giving. If you are mentioning or putting any project, be thorough with whatever you are writing. Because a lot of times, like, let us say you get a shortlist, right? Do not think they would actually just ask surface level questions based on a project. I'll just put the project and I will prepare if I get a shortlist. Understand that they actually go at a very deeper level in interviews, and sometimes your entire interview could be CV grilling based. So there's a, while self projects are an excellent way, and I think that's true with anything you write in a CV. Be thorough with whatever you're writing, but like the additional advantage is like you cannot expect to get like it's very less chance that you get a shortlist if your CV doesn't have anything related to that particular company. So, like for an example, I did not get a SD shortlist. All of my shortlists were data or uh, say quant related because I didn't mention any software project on my CV. So that is just one example I'm giving to you because I did put emphasis on a lot of quant projects. So whenever you are making your particular CV, be mindful that you need to have one section or two sections that actually it need not be projects, it could be internship, it could be competitions, but there should be something that caters to it. So if you don't have anything right now, and obviously 1 month is a short time duration, perhaps you can work parallelly on a project that is inclined. I think,
That was
yeah.
quite informative. Moving on to the next question. In your experience, how much weight do open source contributions carry on a CV? And how should students effectively showcase them? Anshul, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I think they open source contributions are are also an excellent way. Like the argument regarding projects just carry forwards. It's an excellent way to target software companies because that shows ki you are well equipped with the tech stack. You are actually inclined towards what they are catering to. So I think if you have one, companies like Google, etc., are actually like it's a very good way to show ki okay you're inclined towards them. So there are a few set of companies that actually look forward to open source contributions. So yeah, I think it's a if you have done that, then I think it's a good way to target those companies. But yeah,
That's a great point. Shubhanil, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, just like Anshu said, I'd again reiterate that open source contributions are a very good way to showcase your projects and skills. But again, I would say that they are just like another project, and unless you do say a Google Summer of Code or an European Summer of Code project, I would say that unless you have any currently ongoing open source projects, I would advise you to keep doing the self projects that you're doing because open source generally takes up a lot of time and it's a long term commitment as such. And that's what I would say. Yes.
Okay,
Uh,
that's a valuable comparison.
uh,
I'm moving. Sorry, Himani.
Sorry. You said it's a long-term commitment. Can you suggest an ideal time we can start?
Uh, See, so there is no ideal time as such that for when you can start, but it's just whenever you have any free time, just browse through. If you want to say, look for repositories that are actively, looking for contributors, you can just browse through either this year's or last year's Google Summer of Code organizations and choose one that you think fits your skill set or your interests. And typically, open source organizations are very welcoming towards new joiners and who want actually to contribute to the project. So you can engage and connect with the maintainers and the people who are actively working on problems in the repository. So you can just start anytime you want.
Okay, that's very helpful to know. Moving on to our next question. Are there any specific platforms where ratings or activity matter more? And for students looking to build, let's say, skill consistency, what platforms would you recommend for regular practice? Anshul, would you like to go first?
yeah. So specifically related to uh, say SD companies, um, what I think your ratings in Code Forces and CodeChef, I think specifically Code Forces, do matter. So I think one or two CV pointers are simply like a lot of my batchmates also wrote was if you are say above a threshold, suppose you're 1400 or 1600, that's simply a line that you can write to just show ki, okay, you have a particular skill set. And also one more line that's like if you have achieved a rating in a particular contest, suppose you were in top 1000 like or top percentage in a particular contest, that's also an achievement. So you can write it in your CV as key like this. I think if you would see some templates, there's a section of let's say academic achievements. So there is something you can write that. I think there are specific companies that actually look for that threshold. So I remember, I think there was an HFT like one box. I'm not sure, but I think they had specifically mentioned that if you have, say, your CF rating about 2100, then I think regardless of the CG cutoff, you're eligible to apply. Um, so as I remember, I think it was just circuital or like CF rating over threshold. But adding to that, regardless, your primary emphasis should be like mastery in DSA. So there are good platforms for that. I think AlgoZenith is an exceptional way to just be thorough with DSA if you have less time left, especially if you have like 3 or 4 months. Uh, it's a good way to just complete that program so that you have a good skill set. Otherwise, I think lead code is best for just practicing DSA and like being regular with it. If since you have, I think, 1 month left, what you should be ideally doing is revising at this stage. And I think just if some steps are left, be completing that so you can actually refer. So for just preparation of OAs, you can actually go through GOC, like they are organized contests or reusing last year's OAs. So you should just look it up and to see what kind of questions do come. Or you can just go through interview bit to see what kind of questions generally they do ask. So I think at this stage, I was just doing like that stuff last year. So I think that would help you guys. Other than that, yeah, I think if you are asking specifically to rating, I would say it's not itna significant. If you have, it's well and good. If you don't have, do not stress. Like even if you don't write that specific line, but you have good projects, and like I say, it's like Shubhrin mentioned, it is a balance. If you are exceptionally well in the other fields, it can be easily covered up. But yeah, so like answer to the question is that.
That was quite insightful. Shubhranil, what are your recommendations?
I think Anshul rounded it up pretty well, covering most of the points. Uh, I would just say that if you are looking to showcase your rating, purely your rating, uh, let us not talk about skill building right now. If you are trying to showcase your rating, then Code Forces and CodeChef are the best way to do that because for a lot of quant dev roles, when you are trying to log into the online assessment platform on HackerRank, you are required to give your Code Forces and CodeChef handles and ratings as a as part of the login form. So that's all. Yes.
Thank you, Anshul. Shubhranil, now moving on to the next question. It's on the right internship. So, how should students weigh opportunities with high learning potential versus reputed companies with average roles? Uh, which experience tends to be more valuable to this? Anshul, what are your thoughts on this?
Um, so I'll answer this like as frank as I can be. To be honest, if you are figured out with what like field you want to go into, the only reason you should be getting into a startup is purely for the fact that the people in startup generally like people higher up, they are very well networked. So if you work in startup, you get to meet them and you get to leverage their network. That's the only like obviously, and the kind of work you'll be getting will be very hands-on. So let us say you are working. So I was actually like discussing with people at my internship, and one of them is a lateral hire. So he actually worked in a very small, say, trading firm. So the advantage he told me was that he actually understood the entire pipeline of how these trading firms essentially work. And I think the work you get there is a lot more hands-on, so you get a good skill set. But I would tell you the say the advantage. So this is like the two pros you need, like you'll get if you join a startup. You'll get a good hands-on experience. Your skill set would improve drastically, and I think you can network. You can leverage the network of the higher ups because if they're standing a startup, that is one advantage. But at the other hand, why reputed companies actually do look good is that like the brand name looks good on your CV. So when you are actually working, you would be climbing the corporate ladder. Let us say, even if you have plans of further studying, if you have say worked in a company that had a good name, right? That adds weightage to your CV. That if you haven't figured out, and let's say there's a possibility of you going into further studies. Obviously, if you're planning for masters, research projects play a way more role compared to corporate. But if you have any chance, like you might go into MBA, then a good brand name is like exponentially better than compared to a startup. So you need to be figured out on what you're looking into. Also, if you have worked in a good firm, it is like it helps in future as well. So you get that advantage as well. And also the network argument is just way better here. But like I would like to say, like you need to be thorough with what you want. If you want to be like startups, obviously would provide you more exposure. But at the other hand, you get other advantages if you go into a good firm. So yeah, I think that's that. I just weighed it like you would have to weigh it for yourself. I just listed the pros and cons.
In hindsight, what kind of learning curve did you experience at Goldman Sachs, and like how do you think it influenced your long-term goals?
Okay, so technically, obviously the projects the interns get at GS, they are curated in the way that they expect to be finished or a significant portion of it to be finished. So the learning curve is actually pretty smooth. When you'll get into corporate internship, you will realize that the first week is just setting up. You actually need a lot of access because they can't afford any reach. So you are aware of the topic. So the first week is essentially just reading papers and realizing. Of course, that depends on projects and projects, but uh, like they make sure that the entire experience is like pretty smooth. Uh, but that being said, I think another point I would like to mention is that in a big firm, you'll be working in a very small subsection of a problem. Whereas in a startup, like the work you'll be getting will be a lot more important relatively to that company. So like that's a huge difference. You guys need to be aware of. Yeah.
That's a valuable comparison. Thank you. Shubhranil, do you want to add your take?
Sure. So what I would say is that just like Anshul mentioned in closing, that when you are working in a startup, right? So since the number of people is usually a little less than people working in a large firm, so any project that you get is always going to be much more impactful, and you have to do a lot of work across teams. You're not going to be confined to a single sub team which is just looking over your project. So that means that you will be able to, look at the entire process in a holistic sense. But what happens in a large firm is that you are encouraged to talk to people, as in here in American Express, I'm reaching out to people, connecting, uh, trying to get to know about their work, what they are doing, how the entire team is contributing to American Express's profitability. But my specific project is usually a small, low impact project. I have been lucky to be assigned a live project, but it's still not that important to the company. It's a it's a part of a small set, right? So especially when you are sitting for your campus internship drive, right? So I would say that since most people sitting for the campus drives will not have a huge amount of experience. So I would say that you could potentially look at startups for actually gaining skills and insights into the industry as a whole. Right. So that's my take.
Mm. Thank you, Shubhranil. That was really informative. All right, moving to our next question. Are online courses, completions, and certificates actually worth including? And for someone who doesn't have any formal certificates, what's a good way to still showcase their skills? Anshul, would you like to begin?
Okay. So yeah, I think certificates generally, again, it would be just a CV pointer. In my opinion, they won't hold itna weightage. I think in non-tech, they are a lot more like certifications like CFA actually do carry a lot more weightage. So they are a CV pointer there. But it's like if you have a certificate from Coursera you have completed, say the ML part, then I think it's just at max a CV pointer, and like that is something you should not be focusing it na. Like if you want to show ki you actually have a particular skill, you choose skill projects or choose um, putting internships there instead of putting certifications. In my opinion, they have less weightage compared to like the other stuff you can write. So yeah, if you don't have those certifications, you need not worry as long as you have like tangible work to show you have that particular skill. So in my opinion, they don't have it now, which, but I think if Shivani has a different perspective.
Thank you, Anshul. Shubhranil, would you add to it?
So I'll be very frank. So for me, uh, online courses and certifications are only supposed to provide a structured way in which I can learn a skill or a particular domain, right? It just gives me an entry, a slowly guided entry into the field. Uh, if you want to fill your CV, I would, and if you have time on your hands, I would suggest making projects based off of what you have learned on those certifications. That's
That
all.
was informative. Uh, okay, so moving on to the next question. CV-based interviews can get pretty intense, especially with deep dives into your resume. So, what kind of questions should students prepare for in these sessions? Also, how should they go about choosing and presenting references? Anshul, would you like to begin?
Yeah. So like see, could you just repeat a question? I think I missed the audio, or I
Sure.
just yeah.
So, like as you said, CV-based interviews are pretty intense, and they can go deep dive into your resume, right? So, what kind of questions should students prepare for in these sessions? So, and how should they go about using and presenting references? Like, what makes a reference
Okay.
reliable?
Mhm. So, coming to the first part, like if your interview process are in fact like they will go into the depths of whatever concept you have mentioned. So, I think one exceptional way is just to give mock interviews. Like you have seniors, you have batchmates, just ask them to grill your CV once. Also, like I've mentioned beforehand, like if you are writing anything or writing any project, since you have a month, Abhi, start like preparing a CV abhi se. And like if you're mentioning a particular project, or it's like it's you're mentioning an internship, but you did it last year. So you're not that thorough with whatever work you done. You have some time, take some time out and just to understand whatever content you wrote. So, and in fact, I'd say ki do not put something you do not understand or you think you won't be able to understand in the time that you have left. So I think I also gave a lot of mock interviews before actually just going ahead. And there are I think in there's a proper does I think Communiqué also does there's a lot of societies actually that do mock interviews, so you can also go through that. But like seniors in hall, batchmates in hall, just approach them and I ask them to grade your CV and take a mock interview. Um, Also, like for references, um, I think references if are one thing, like they are a proof that you did a particular, I think internship. By references here in the question, they like you mean letter of recommendation, right? Like reference from a professor. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So like you don't need to put that on your CV. You need to just write what work you do. And references are technically a proof that you actually did a particular internship. So technically, if you are writing an internship, you need to have some sort of proof that you did it because there is like needs to be some authenticity in what you write in your CV. So that is that that is at max the extent like that will help you.
That's very useful to know. Shivani, anything to add here?
Yes, so what I would say is that CV based interviews usually are a game of probability, right? Because it depends on which part of your CV the interviewer is much more comfortable with. And you need to be prepared very well for all kinds of cases. And suppose in SD, you might need to know how a particular service works in the backend, or which data structures are used in implementation of certain structures. These will come up in the later parts of the interviews, but again, you do not want to, you know, rely purely on chance. So it's best that you know everything, but only if you have time right now. And also for data roles, when you bold, when you put something on bold, make sure that you know each and every aspect about it, right? If you're putting something in bold uh, on a CV pointer and you are unable to explain it, that just puts your interview in jeopardy. Also, one important thing that I would say is whenever you're putting a project or an internship, be prepared to explain it in such a way that even a person who does not have a background in the specific topic you have worked on is able to understand it very lucidly. So, suppose I work on some time series models, right? So, in my interview, the interviewer asked me to explain it with absolutely zero mathematics involved. So, I had to explain it to him in an intuitive way, which made sense to him why he would actually want to use it in modeling that particular problem. So that is one thing you need to make sure you know about all your projects and internships. And for internships, you need to be able to explain to the interviewer why your internship work is important and how it made an impact. Even if it's a research intern, why that problem is important in academia and how you ended up solving it. So
Um, Thank you, Shubhanil. Time series models are really a very cool project. All right, for our final question, if you could give just one golden piece of advice to the freshers who are just starting their internship prep journey, what would it be? Let's hear this from both of you. Shubhanil, would you like to start?
sure. So if you're a fresher and are entering your second year, so what I would say is take some more time to fully explore the options you have, the different profiles you can go to. But uh, keep in mind that you also need to, uh, within a few months, you also need to solidify that you want to actually target this particular domain and maybe have a backup or side domain, right? So for myself, I had data as my target domain and I worked on a little bit of SD in my free time. So when you have solidified that you want to target this, then what you can do is you can start working on projects or you can start approaching professors for internships and overall building a solid profile in that domain. So what I would say is first take a little bit more time to explore and then solidify. That's it.
That was quite informative. Thank you. Anshul, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so I think Shubhanil did say uh, what's important. I'll just mention one or two more points that I feel. One thing is, he do not get so involved in building your backup. He, my main role is tech, let's say, but I'm building a non-tech backup as such. Do not get so invested in that your main front is compromised. Ensure your skill set in the main front, which whatever field you're targeting and decide to target, that is not compromised because you have a 1 year time and a lot of these, especially in let's say tech, if you want to have a really good say CF rating, it would take something like a year to do so. So if you want that, ensure that your this side of the things are figured out, then only you can afford to like invest a lot more than required in your backup field. Uh, Another thing is that I think Shubhranil did mention is soon enough you only have 2 semesters now to when you will be actually be sitting. So while in the first year, I think you would have explored a lot. You would have like some sort of inclination would have developed by now in one particular field. So at this point, like do explore thoda more to just double to understand what all is there. But like now is the time to actually just sort of starting to double down in okay, this is my main field and I'll invest most of my resources here. And also, it makes more sense to have your backup incline in the same sort of field as your main. So, like, if Shubhanil had data as its main target, SD is comes in the same field of tech. So that makes sense of having data and SDA as backup, or even quant and SDA as backup. It makes slightly less sense if you are having SD as a front and let's say finance as a backup. So um, start actually figuring out what essentially you want because it would be a lot more beneficial like as a advice I would like to say you it would be like you'd be in a much better position if you would have invested in related fields because your skill set would be a lot more say defined other instead of having a very like a vast uh, skill set, but you're not exceptionally well in any of the fields, then you would in fact suffer because the target companies would just choose someone who's better than you in that particular field. So, like, think about those things. You obviously you have a year, and your second year is just beginning. So, do explore. You would also get a lot more opinions from other people. Talk to seniors. Understand why. Let us say you want to get into SD. Understand what that role entails, what skill set you would need to develop, etc. So yeah, you have time, but like use it wisely. That's my advice to someone that has an year to work on.
Thank you, Anshul. That was quite informative. Now, we will be taking a few questions from the audience. Please feel free to put your question in the chat box and we will be taking them up.
Until then, I wanted to ask personally, how did you both decide your backups? For example, we are in first year, we are really confused about which domain to choose. So, if you could give us your personal experience about choosing your backups.
Yeah, so personally, I'm not the best person to answer that because uh, I decided that quant will be my main role. So one of the things would actually helps in deciding a field is to actually know what the companies look for. So um, essentially, if you have that particular skill set, or let us say some requirement of a particular company is just beyond your reach, it could be something that it like the company doesn't open for a department, or the company has a some sort of bias. Then obviously, while you're deciding your main forte, it makes a bit more sense to uh, avoid that. Obviously, avoid that and actually start focusing a bit more like on something that is more reachable. I would say that if you have no like let us say you have a very sort of inclination towards that field. If you have decided, then I think you should go into it. But if you don't, like if you're just deciding right now, be a lot more rational about what field you're deciding. That's just one thing. Second thing is that uh, actually get into, let us say I want to understand if SD is for me, do a project, get into it, understand what it is all about, and afterwards you can just make the decision if it is for you or not. So that's just one way. I think a lot of people decide their I like this and this, I want to get into this purely by just hit and tag. So in first year, you would have explored, like you would be in some societies, you would have done some sort of competitions. A lot of people do case comps in first year. So if that is something that appeals to you, maybe you should focus more on non-tech roles. But let us say you have started CP already, and that is something that is a lot more exciting to you, then it makes more sense to get into that. So one thing is like what like after first year you get some sort of idea ki this particular subsection is a lot more exciting to me than what is not. That's just one way. Second is I want you to be rational about what field you are choosing and then decide what backup I want. Like think it would be a little, say, let us say you are targeting a top HFT, but like uh, you might have something that they do not look for. Could be some, you have a CG that doesn't meet their cutoff, or let us say like related. I hope you get my point. So I want you to be rational about what your main field would be and what backup you are choosing. And do not, if you have 1 year left, do not explore two fields as a like start investing, and do not be someone who is not good at anything, right? Like you did a case com and then you got into data, did not complete data pura अच्छे से, and then you start, okay, maybe I'll do finance, I'll pick up a certificate. Should do not be that person. Decide ki maybe like if you would have inclination ki finance is my inclination, go into that. Or otherwise start, like if you are liking data, complete it once and then maybe make an informed decision. Also approach seniors and like get as much data or as much information that you can get. Yeah, that was, I think, my opinion on the question.
Shubhranil, what's your take?
So I think the point where Anshul talked about being rational, right? So I think that's a very good and important point that he mentioned. Apart from that, I would say that talk to as many people as you can. Talk to seniors, talk to even professors about their experiences in different fields that they are pursuing. And be sure to talk to a lot of people because then you get different perspectives on the same field, right? So there's no bias as such. You get the holistic perspective, and then you can decide for yourself whether it's something that you actually want to do. So that's all I have to say for this.
Thank you, Shivanil. We'll take up the questions from the chat. The first question being, what is the importance of leaving less white spaces and how should one craft their statements in CV to not extend and eliminate possible white spaces? Anshul, would you like to take
Importance.
this?
Yeah, so the importance is that your CV looks good. So if your CV looks good, it's more likely that the HR would read it more. And if it looks bad, it's possible that it gets rejected purely from that round only. Um, how you should fix it? First of all, understand two pointers. I mention even though it's not asked. Put emphasis. Start your sentences with achieved XYZ result, did this much impact. So there's something called Harvard action words. You should look it up. And whenever you're making that sentence, start and like if you have numbers and if you have some sort of impact, start with in the first part of the sentence so that it catches the eye. Second point is if you don't want white spaces, write a bigger sentence, ask ChatGPT to just shorten it for you. I think that's the easiest way you can do it. Do not like it's something you would have a lot of time to figure like do. The importance is that if your CV looks good, it gives a good impression and it's a lot uh, easier. Uh, like the HR would read it more and like you'll go further the process.
Thank you, Anshul. Now, the next question on the chat is, what domain projects are good when you are targeting SD? Shubhranil, would you like to take this?
So for SD projects, you could have a mix of them, right? So first of all, you need to choose a language which is going to be your main forte. So for backend, some people choose JavaScript, some people choose to do it in Python because they are already familiar with it. And recently, Golang is also gaining a little bit of traction. So you need to first choose your language, and then I would say you could keep one project which is based purely of the language itself. Say if you choose JavaScript, build something purely out of vanilla JavaScript, just HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And this might take a little bit more effort because you are not relying on any pre-built frameworks. But if you have something like that on your CV, that just signals to the recruiter that you know the ins and outs of the language pretty well, right? And then you could move on to more complex projects such as a full stack project with front end as well as back end with integrated APIs and databases. So a variety of projects is always good, and especially if you can make something in a short time in a hackathon, that also signals that you are pretty well versed with the whole tech stack, right? Even when you do it with a team. So if you are pretty clear about what your contributions are, then the recruiter knows that you are well versed with the tech stack, even if it's just your part, and they have more confidence in forwarding your resume to the next.
Wow, okay, that's nice. Anshul, what would you suggest?
Um, I think Shubhanil covered it up pretty well. Um, yeah, I think is that it covers it. I would just add one more point that so I think regarding STE, so whatever project you are making, let us say, so a lot of time what happens is that you mention a particular language or a tech stack uh, to target a particular company that could help. But like ensure that you are thorough. Like a lot of time, what would happen is that the interview direction would just go into the line of what project that you have mentioned. And if you are not thorough with it, it like your interview would be in jeopardy. So like how you should approach it, I think Shubhanil covered it. But do not try to say compensate with the process. I just say that.
Thank you, Anshul. That's insightful. We'll be taking up next question. What is the impact of involvement in inter-IIT tech or general championship tech in our CV? Anshul, would you like to take this one?
So if in second year you have already done inter IT tech, then that's good. That means you do have already a very good skill set. So inter IT tech, what it helps is at the end of the day they will still come as your projects. And I think there is just some brownie points, like if in GC you did win or in inter IT you did win, you can just write, yeah, I won gold. So that carries a little more weight. But realize कि in tech, right, there's a lot more emphasis on what content and what project you worked on instead of thinking about ki that's a CV spike. Winning is a CV spike. That's a very more non-tech concept that if you actually ended up winning in GC or inter IT, it holds a lot more weightage in the non-tech domain than in the tech domain. So do not run after GCs or inter IT if the project is not something you like or it's not catering to what companies you are targeting. They do hold weightage. Let us say you have a project in the same field. If it's an inter ID project, it would be, let us say, 1.2 times the same weightage, but it's not different in tech specifically. It's a lot more important like what did you work on, how relevant it is, and if the at max it will be a conversation point. So do not focus it now. Yes, I think that is my opinion.
Thank you. Shubhanil, your take on this?
Just Yes. So the thing is, what Anshul said definitely is the highlight that tech companies, when they come for recruiting, they are not expecting you to have experience. They're looking for skills rather than experience. So rather than running for the big names or big competitions such as IIT, so I would say that look at actual substance in your projects. And also, if you want to target a specific company, you could actually go for competitions organized by the company, right? So I think every summer, American Express conducts a campus Super Bowl that you could look to take part in. Even if you don't win, you can always put that as a project or competition on your CV. That definitely helps from my experience. Uh, Even in the future, I think next month Adobe is conducting a hackathon, which you can look at if you are targeting roles at Adobe. So rather than Inter IT or GC, I think targeting these is a better option.
Thank you, Shubhrini. Uh, Personally, I would like to ask if tech, sports, or cultural impacts more. What kind of competitions?
Could you clarify that a little bit of it?
Like you said, in like we should not be running for inter IIT tech, but if we have experience in sports or cultural, would that be useful?
See, you have an extracurricular section on your CV, right? So now, if you put that in, that's a very good point. But that's up to chance if the interviewer is uh, vibing with that uh, achievement or the experience that you have. But uh, that that might boost your resume. But if you are looking for a guaranteed way to land an internship, I would suggest that focusing on hard skills such as coding or data analysis is the best way to do. So these are brownie points, but not certainly not the focal points.
Thank you for clearing it. The next question up in the chat is how to decide sequence of different sections. Shubhrini,
Um,
would you?
so
So that depends on the profile that you are looking at. So the generally conventional uh, sequences, internships, projects, uh, competitions, then the skill sets you have, the coursework that you have completed, and finally extracurriculars. Right, with your biodata with CGPA and education at the top. But say you are looking at very high level HFTs, right? So one very common thing about the HFTs is that they look for exceptional talent, right? So if you have achieved a very brilliant rank at some competitive exams such as JEE Advanced or KVPY or something of that level, or if you have achieved something in Olympiads when you were at school, say INMO or the physics chemistry Olympiads, if you got to the national level or if you represented India. So, or even if you are a very good, if you have a very good code forces profile, so what you can do is you can push the achievements section up, up like above, say, even internships, so that it catches the eye of the recruiters. Because you know that's what they are looking for, right? So that is how you can tailor the sequence. But if you don't have any such very niche domains in mind, I would suggest that you can just follow the conventional pattern.
Thank you, Shubhranil. Anshul, would you like to add anything?
No, I think he covered like almost everything. You can actually mention coursework. I think some people do also mention coursework. So if you have like quant specific and you don't have a project, you can mention PNS or something related to the course. Especially when you are, say, making a core profile, you should mention that. But yeah, I think his was like the template he mentioned is like pretty much correct.
Okay, we have another question. What projects would you recommend for quant profile and SD for someone with no internships? Uh, Anshul, would you like to begin?
Yeah. So for quant, I think there are a four, like set of three, four template projects. Um, one is, I think, one is you can do any sort of portfolio optimization project. It could be based on portfolio optimization using Monte Carlo simulations. So I had did that. So that's like a something that's a bit easier side. So you can actually manage to do it or in span of 2 weeks or something. Another could be something related to machine learning. So you can maybe do something like stock forecasting using ML models. Could be LSTM, anything you implemented. So that's a second sort of project you can do. It's like simple stock market forecasting. Um, Third is yeah, any sort of time series analysis project that you're making is actually comes in that domain. So you can yeah, you can look up to what sort of time series you can just Google time series projects, uh, implement any model, and that comes in that domain. Another is you can actually look up into valuation of derivatives. So the east, like the template project in this domain is valuation using the Black-Scholes model, but that is something that has like now everyone writes in their CV. So maybe you should look it up on sort of advancements or something other than that. So actually do look up into any sort of, let's say there are a lot of stochastic process such there's OU process. So you can just code it up. You can find resources on that. But any sort of stochastic process implementation also comes in that. So these are three, four template projects specific to quant. And I think if you are targeting quant companies, do write any like one of these projects because that would help differentiate your profile. Other than that, um, for SD, I think Shubhanil can uh, take it from here.
Sure. For quantitative research roles, I think Anshul has pretty much covered all that there is. So I'll just quickly cover the quant dev part. So first of all, there is no doubt that for quant dev roles, you'll have to be very good at CP or DSA, right? With a good enough code forces written. So once you've got past that, what you could do is you could start learning C++ because C++ internals and object-oriented programming in C++ is frequently asked in HFT development exams. So when you've when you're a little familiar with C++ and its internals, then you can start by building some projects related to that or hovering around that. So one of them I would say would be to make a backtesting engine. It doesn't have to be in C++, but that shows that you know how backtesting of different strategies works, right? And then you could probably write one or two strategies and backtest them on different markets as well. And next, what you could do is look into low latency C++, right? So that is something that a lot of companies use in their development. And some of the key terms are that you could search up after this are, kernel bypass, lock-free buffers. And if you can just write your own implementation from scratch, right? So that itself is a very big boost to your CV, that you could implement this pretty difficult thing by yourself, and that will give you a lot of credibility. So I think that rounds it up.
That concludes our Q&A session. Thank you so much for sharing such insightful answers. And audience, I hope we have cleared all your doubts. This brings us to prepness.in, a platform that is built for internships and placements. Prepnest offers broad features: AI resume review, AI interviews, resource hub, and mentorship. The AI resume review will analyze your CV based on four pillars: basics, impact, visual, and relevance. Basic will score the basic content of your resume. Visual will score the format of your CV. And relevance will show how relevant your CV is to the job role you selected and tells you what to do to increase your relevance.
An AI agent takes your AI interview with live AI generated video and audio, giving you the feel of a real interview. So, today we launched the Job Ready Challenge. The steps are: step 1, sign up on the platform using the QR link given below. Step 2, upload your resume and give an AI interview. Step 3, get scores and feedback on your job readiness. So, Janta, scan the QR code and iterate on your CV and yourself.
A huge thank you to our panelists for taking the time to share not just their journeys, but also the strategic thinking behind how they build strong and impactful CVs.
And to our audience, thank you for staying with us and participating so actively. Don't forget to join us again at 4 p.m. for the non-tech session. Uh, it's going to be another section full of fun day. Thank you.
Thank you.